At some point you will want to put some text on screen, perhaps for the title of your video, credits, or a section title. Or you might be creating a video sales letter where all or most of the video consists of text and your narration. In all cases, a good background can help make your video look interesting and professional. But we're going to create video backgrounds for our text that look good and can be still or include a little motion. Best of all, we can do it in less than a minute with the standard camera app. We're going to use 3 approaches to create our title backgrounds. The first is to shoot footage of unfamiliar objects or familiar objects shot in a slightly unfamiliar way. The second is to shoot footage of objects that are very close to the camera lens, that will allow light to illuminate the object, but because of the close proximity of the object to the lens, they'll be massively enlarged and out of focus. The third method is to cover the iPhone's lens with an object you normally think as being opaque. However, when you place a bright light like the sun or a lamp on the other side of the object, the iPhone lens will pick up transmitted light and result in a solid or graduated color image. But what all 3 of these have in common is that they just require a little creative thinking, but nothing too strenuous. We just need to ditch what we think everyday objects look like and look at them in a slightly different way. For instance, how about this low-energy compact fluorescent light bulb? On the scale of a room, the light spreads out evenly, but close up, it produces shadow spokes on the ceiling. We could use this as an interesting pattern for a background. I'll get the bulb and ceiling rows just out of frame and film for about 10 seconds. If you want your text on screen for longer, shoot for longer so that you have enough footage of the background. Doing this handheld will inevitably introduce a little movement into the video. If you're aiming for an urban grunge aesthetic, then handheld will be fine because it'll add a little edginess. But if you want the background to be rock solid, you can mount your iPhone on a tripod. If you want to fine-tune the exposure, touch the screen until the exposure and focus lock is activated. Then alter the exposure until you get the effect you want. The second type of background we're going to shoot is the extreme close-up. We're going to be so close that the iPhone's optics won't be able to focus on the object. Don't worry, that's what we're after. You want to get the camera lens about 1 to 2 centimeters from the surface, but you'll need to strike a balance between getting an interesting look while still letting in enough daylight. If you want, you could use a couple of flashlights for additional illumination. I'm going to shoot the exterior of my house. First, a close-up of a brick. For a more interesting look, perhaps a more weathered brick would be a better idea, or even one with a little moss or algae on it. Rusty metal or old plaster and old woodwork with peeling paint would also make good textures. The second close-up is of the white pebble dash surface outside my house. The light and shadow between the tops of the stone chips and gullies between them give a really attractive variation in shade and light, and there's even a subtle colour in there as well. Finally, this is where we put objects up against the lens and either use the sun as our light source or get close to a reasonably bright light. A solid colour background is easy. All you'll need is some coloured paper. I've got some green, yellow and pink sticky notes, and all I need to do is cover the lens of the iPhone and point it towards the sun or a bright light. If you want more variation in the colour, take a page out of a colour magazine with some interesting and colourful images and use that against the camera lens. But don't feel that you're restricted to items as thin as paper. Try out whatever you've got at hand. This is my grey woolen scarf folded over until it's double thickness, and again it makes an interesting visual effect. I also tried the glass of my front door. It's got a decorative frosted pane, so I put the iPhone's lens flat up against it. In this case, you can just make out that there's a bit of green from my lawn, a hint of red from my car, and just across the road there's the terracotta of the bricks of the house opposite. If you wanted, you could deliberately place some brightly coloured or interestingly shaped objects just beyond the frosted glass. The frosted glass would then give a blurred effect. One last thing that you can put in front of the lens when you have nothing else around you is yourself. Specifically, what's inside you. Now, don't go all squeamish on me. You see, when I was 5 years old, I was given a torch or flashlight as a birthday present. It fascinated me that the light was bright enough to shine through the flesh of my fingers. Now, if I put this LED torch behind my fingers and turn off the room lights, you can see even with my adult-sized fingers, the light shines through. We're effectively seeing my blood. So right there in my fingertip, I should have a red background. All I need is the sun, even on this overcast day, and to put my finger over the iPhone's lens. The automatic exposure adjusts itself, and there's literally a blood red background. If it's too bright for you, tap and hold the screen to go into exposure and focus lock and drag the brightness icon down to give a darker red. Now that we have a few different video backgrounds recorded, let's take a look at them in the iMovie app. To show what the backgrounds would look like in proper context, I've added some text and trimmed the top and tail of each clip. First up, here's my finger over the iPhone's lens. Now the green sticky note with the blast filter added for a vignette effect. Now the house brick, and with that slight shake, it has an organic feel, which is also true of the PEBBLE dashed wall, and I quite like the change in brightness at the end when I move the iPhone. For the frosted glass background, I've added the Western filter. And on the ceiling light, the vintage filter adds a pale yellow hue to the showdown effect. So that's what the backgrounds can look like, and each one took less than a minute to create. You can see how easy it is to produce backgrounds to use behind your text instead of plain black or white. There are literally hundreds of potential backgrounds all around you. You can create your own collection of interesting backgrounds that are completely unique to you.